The bell above the door let out a tired jingle as Daniel Mercer stepped into the small, time-worn diner. He wasn't supposed to be there. His day was supposed to be filled with meetings, phone calls, and handshakes in shiny conference rooms. Downtown Phoenix was waiting for him, with contracts, real estate deals, and opportunities that had taken him years to build. But fate had a different plan. A flat tire on a lonely stretch of highway had led him here, just outside Yuma, Arizona. The place smelled of bacon grease and old coffee. The booths were patched with duct tape, and the floor tiles were worn thin where thousands of weary travelers had passed through. Daniel adjusted his crisp, tailored suit, a sharp contrast to the dusty, fading world around him. The few men at the counter glanced up from their plates, truckers and farmers in weathered caps, their eyes lingering on his polished shoes and sleek watch. He slid into a corner booth, hoping to make a quick stop of it. Just a coffee, maybe a call for a tow truck, and he'd be on his way. But when the waitress approached, pad in hand, the world seemed to pause. It was her. For a moment his breath caught. The name floated to his lips before his mind even caught up. Layla. She didn't recognize him at first. Her hair was tied back loosely, a few tired strands falling to her face. The apron she wore was faded, frayed at the edges. Her smile, one he remembered as bright and unstoppable, was now a shadow of itself, worn thin by years of exhaustion. "Morning," she said, polite but distracted. "Coffee." He blinked, studying her face. 20 years was a long time, but not long enough to erase the shape of her eyes, the curve of her cheekbones, or the memory of late afternoons on the stoop of her old apartment building, when she'd quiz him on math problems and tell him to aim higher than their rough neighborhood ever dared to dream. "Lila?" he asked softly. She stopped writing, her brow furrowed as she met his eyes. "Wait. Daniel Mercer." He smiled, a little unsure. "Hey, Lila. Long time." Her expression shifted, surprise, recognition, then something else. Something she tried to hide behind a practiced smile. "Well, I'll be. Daniel Mercer in a diner like this. What brings you here?" He gestured toward the window where his car sat lopsided on a flat tire. "Bad luck. I'm on my way to Phoenix for a meeting." She nodded, tucking the pad into her apron. "Coffee's on the house. It's been, 20 years? Closer to 22, he said, his voice softening. As she moved between tables, refilling mugs and taking orders, Daniel found himself watching her more closely than he intended. There was a limp in her step, a faint tremor in her hand as she poured the coffee. And when she turned away from customers, the smile faded as quickly as it had come. He remembered the girl who once dreamed big, of opening a bookstore, traveling, maybe even leaving their hometown behind together. They had promised each other, "One day we'll make it out." He had kept that promise. Lila, it seemed, had been left behind. When her shift finally slowed, she slid into the booth across from him, wiping her hands on her apron. "So, what happened to you?" she asked, her eyes scanning the cut of his suit. "I'm in real estate," he said simply, leaving out the empire he'd built across 5 states, the high-rise office with his name etched on the door. Lila gave a small, almost wistful smile. "I always knew you'd do something big." Daniel leaned forward, elbows on the table. "And you? What about your plans? The bookstore? College?" Her gaze drifted toward the counter, where a pot of coffee steamed under dim fluorescent lights. "Life had other plans," she murmured. In that moment, the bell above the diner door jingled again, letting in a gust of desert wind. Daniel glanced at his phone, emails piling up, a meeting waiting, but for the first time in a long time, he didn't feel the pull of his schedule. Because sitting across from him was someone who had once believed in him when no one else did. And now, she looked like she needed someone to believe in her. The hum of the diner softened as the lunchtime rush faded, leaving only the quiet clinking of cutlery and the low murmur of a country song playing on the radio. Daniel's coffee had long gone cold, but he didn't care. Across from him, Lila stirred her tea absent-mindedly. Her eyes fixed on a crack in the tabletop as though it held the answers to everything she hadn't said. "You know," Daniel began gently, I still remember that night before graduation. You told me not to give up no matter what. You said we'd both get out, make something of ourselves. Lila let out a soft, almost bitter laugh. I remember. We were young. We thought the world was waiting for us. Daniel leaned in a little closer. What happened, Lila? She hesitated, fingers tightening around her cup. Life happened, she whispered, her voice barely rising above the hum of the fridge behind the counter. My mom got sick, and college wasn't an option anymore. I worked 2 jobs to keep the lights on, then got married young. Thought it was love. It wasn't. You left. And here I am. Daniel felt a heaviness in his chest. He had imagined success and failure in many forms, but he had never imagined her story would read like this, so far from the dreams they once painted under the flicker of streetlights. You deserved better, he said softly. She shrugged, forcing a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. It's not all bad. I've got a little boy. He's 6 now. Smart as anything. Keeps me going. Her voice brightened slightly at the mention of him, a flicker of light amid the gray. Daniel studied her face. Lines of fatigue where once there had been boundless energy, a limp that hadn't been there before. Yet, beneath it all, the Lila he knew was still there. Hidden but not gone. I'm sorry I didn't stay in touch, he admitted. I thought leaving meant cutting ties would make it easier. I didn't realize I was leaving you behind, too. She looked at him, a mixture of hurt and forgiveness flickering in her gaze. We were kids. We both made choices. You chased your dream, and I tried to survive mine. The silence that followed wasn't heavy. It was thick with memories. Daniel's mind drifted back to their neighborhood. The cracked sidewalks, the distant hum of trains at night, the way Lila had always believed in something better even when no one else did. Then, for the first time since he sat down, a thought hit him like a stone dropped into still water. Maybe this wasn't just a chance encounter. Maybe he was here for a reason. Lila, he said slowly, what if things could change for you? For your boy? Would you want that? She frowned, unsure whether to laugh or cry at the question. Daniel, people like us, we don't get second chances. Get by. That's all. Maybe that's not true, he replied quietly. At that moment, the tow truck driver entered, calling his name. His car was ready. Daniel stood, sliding a card from his wallet and setting it on the table. This is my number. If you ever want to talk, really talk, call me. Lila picked it up, looking at the neat lettering, then back at him. You always did show up when I least expected it. He smiled faintly. And maybe this time I showed up right on time. As he stepped out into the harsh Arizona sun, he couldn't shake the feeling that the flat tire wasn't an accident. It was a doorway. Reminder. Because sometimes the past doesn't just catch up with you. It asks you to do something about it. 2 weeks passed before Daniel's phone buzzed with an unknown number. He stared at the screen, hesitant, then answered. Daniel. It's Lila. Her voice was soft, unsure. I wasn't going to call, but you asked if I wanted things to change. Think I do. For my son. That night they met again, not in the diner but at a small park near her apartment. Her boy, Caleb, ran circles around the swings, his laughter cutting through the cool desert air. Daniel brought sandwiches and juice boxes, simple but enough to make Caleb beam. They sat on the bench as the sun dipped low, turning the sky shades of gold and red. You've built a life, Daniel, Lila said. I can't imagine where I'd even start. You don't have to do it all at once, he replied. But I can help you find a way forward. Not charity. Opportunity. He offered her a job at one of his new properties. Nothing glamorous, but steady work, better pay, and flexible hours to care for Caleb. At first she resisted. Pride was a heavy thing, and old wounds whispered she didn't deserve a rescue. But eventually she said yes. And so began the slow rebuild. Weeks turned into months. Lila's limp faded as she took better care of herself. The dark circles beneath her eyes softened as hope returned. Caleb thrived in school, his teachers amazed at how quickly he caught up. Daniel checked in often, sometimes with advice, sometimes just to listen. What started as an old friendship rekindled into something deeper, steadier. They didn't rush it. They let the days carry them forward. Then came the night Caleb tugged on Daniel's sleeve and said, "You make Mom smile again. She doesn't cry in the kitchen anymore." It hit him harder than any business deal ever had. Years passed, and the diner where they met eventually closed its doors for good. But Patty's place had served its purpose. It had brought two lives back together. One quiet evening, on that same park bench where they first spoke about second chances, Daniel looked at Lila and asked, "Do you ever think about those promises we made as kids?" She smiled, a real smile this time, bright and alive. "Every day. I just didn't think they'd come true like this." And as Caleb played nearby, the desert wind carrying his laughter across the grass, they realized that sometimes life doesn't give you what you planned. It gives you what you were always meant to find. Not wealth, not success, but the chance to make good on a promise, even decades later. Daniel had come to Yuma by accident, but he stayed because of something far greater. The chance to rewrite the story that had once gone unfinished. Because in the end, second chances don't fall from the sky. They walk through old doors, wearing a faded apron and a tired smile, waiting for someone to see them again. Let us know in the comment section if you were inspired, and don't forget to subscribe and hit the like button.